This is the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast with your host, Greg Jameson. Influencer marketing is the process of identifying, researching, engaging, and supporting the people who create high-impact conversations with your customers. On each episode, I talk with industry leaders, business rock stars, and internet celebrities who contribute their knowledge about influencing others and growing your influence. Welcome to the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. I'm your host, Greg Jameson, and I've got a special guest with me today. His name is Brenden from Master Talk, and I'm actually going to let Brenden pronounce his last name for you here in just a minute. But Brenden has a YouTube channel that he started to help the world master the art of public speaking and communication. He coaches purpose-driven entrepreneurs on how to master their message and share their ideas with the world. And public speaking is something that anyone that's been listening to this podcast for a while or knows me personally knows that this is actually something that I feel is really important for every single entrepreneur. Myself, I went through the entire Toastmasters program until I became a distinguished Toastmaster. I purposely have always put myself in kind of uncomfortable positions where I've had to speak in front of the public because it simply makes you a better communicator, and you really need, as an entrepreneur, the ability to communicate your message to the world. So I think that what Brenden is going to share with us here today is super important for anyone that is in business, even if you have an online business and you are working virtually. The whole idea of being able to put your message out there and communicate with the world is vitally important for the success of your business. So big welcome, Brenden. Glad you could join us here today, and go ahead and tell our listeners more about how you got into this, more about yourself, and how to pronounce your last name.
Of course, Greg. Thanks for having me. So yeah, my name is Brenden Kumarasamy. I'm the founder of Master Talk. It's a YouTube channel I started to help the world master the art of communication and public speaking. How I got started was a bit odd, but it's worth telling. When I was in university, I used to do these things called case competitions. So think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age were, playing football or rugby or watching soccer on TV. I wouldn't do any of those things. You can probably tell from looking at me. I'm not a sports guy. But what I did instead, with that same competitive spirit, is I watched other people give presentations, and that's what I did competitively for 3 years. So I presented over 500 times, coached dozens of people on public speaking, and then I got a job in corporate America after I graduated from business school, or I guess corporate Canada in my case. And then what happened was I realized that I wanted to make a bigger impact in the world. And I also noticed that a lot of the content on public speaking available on YouTube or really anywhere online wasn't really good. You hear advice like, oh, you should picture everyone in their underwear, or you're scared of public speaking, just get up on stage. That there's nothing really concrete or actionable. So I started making videos in my mother's basement. I got better on camera, production got better, and here we are today.
Awesome. And I think that actually your timing of getting into this space is really good because of the fact that, one, as I was saying, all entrepreneurs really need to have that skill set. But it seems like with the way that organizations like Toastmasters ended up restructuring themselves to where they were not getting the same kind of traction that they used to get, combined with the fact that now everybody has to do things virtually, and learning from YouTube is a fantastic way of doing that. So what is the biggest thing that you see with people that are trying to become better communicators? What is the one thing that most people really need to work on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest issue, besides understanding where the fear of public speaking comes from, is this idea of knowing how to practice. So I'll give you an easy example to demonstrate this. Picture any skill at all, like learning a piano. Let's say me and you, Craig, want to learn. So we have two options. Option one is pick 10 to 15 songs and figure it out. And if for Mozart, that's going to work really well. But unfortunately for us, that doesn't apply to us. Option two is saying, what is the one song that I'm really passionate about that I can do 20 to 25 times? And over the course of several months, let's say you work on that same song and we both go to a gala. And at that gala, it's a nice fancy event. We see a piano there. So you say to yourself, well, I know this one song, might as well sit down and start playing it. And everyone's going to come around you and say, Craig, you're an amazing pianist. You're world class, even if you only know one song. But that validation, that boost of confidence, everyone telling you that you're a great pianist, makes you go, hey, wait a minute. If I know this one song, I might as well do the other 15, and then you'll be off to the races. We apply this analogy in almost anything. If we want to run a lot faster, we run the same race every single time. If we want to learn how to do the dishes, well, the dishes don't change. It's the same dishes that you learn over and over again with. Any other skill, same thing, except for public speaking. In public speaking, it's Wednesday, your boss, your client, your teacher comes up to you and says, Craig, I need a presentation for Friday. And you go, okay, looks like I'm not talking to my family for 2 days. Let me get this straight. So you practice 10, 15 hours, you finally present, and what happens? You take that presentation, you work so hard to give, crumble it up like a piece of paper, throw it in the garbage, and move on to the next one. Whereas the best speakers in the world present 1 or 2 presentations, but they do it hundreds of times. So people need to practice 1 or 2 presentations to get better exponentially.
Yeah, I think that the other part of that is that if you apply that to the business world, the reality is that you really only need those 1 or 2 presentations, because that's the core message that you're presenting about yourself and your company anyway.
Absolutely. And for you, what I always tell on shows is your presentation is simple, Greg. It's your own podcast. Talk about the vision, talk about who you're trying to help. And you can do that presentation over and over again in perpetuity, like forever.
Yeah, the big thing that I think that people struggle with, though, is even though you are giving that same core message over and over again, you need to change things up for a specific client, for a specific event, whatever. But once you've done it 100 times, 500 times, like you said, or whatever, that really becomes pretty easy. It's as simple as sitting down and taking a look at, say you're doing something for a specific organization. You look at that organization, you look at some of their key employees, what their target market is, what their products and services are, and you just apply your message to that organization. And it really is pretty easy to give the same speech over and over again, like you were saying.
Absolutely. Like one way I can help the audience demystify this is this idea that, I've given my keynote probably 400 times now as of this recording. And in those 400 times, I've spoken everywhere. We're talking food industry, and we're talking kids. I've never customized more than 10% of my keynote. The only time I customize is just the examples that I use to deliver the exact same points. So I really want people to focus on that one keynote, because remember, the best companies in the world will not pay for a bad talk. All they care about is that you deliver an amazing talk. If they do it and you customize a bit, you're still worth your fee. But if you try something brand new and it doesn't work, they're going to second guess why they paid you that amount.
Yeah, which actually makes the message that you're talking about here even stronger than going through a public speaking program where they do sit here and every week it's like you're supposed to come up with a new speech. Yeah, there's some benefit to that, and there's some benefit to being able to speak spontaneously and so forth, but to really be world class, I think, is exactly what you need to do. I remember actually listening to some of the world-class speakers at various events, a Zig Ziglar, for example, and he gave the same speech every time. I can sit there and, still see him, and you pump the water and whatever it is. He said the same thing every time.
I completely agree with you.
So one of the things that it seems like is important for entrepreneurs, especially right now, is being able to deliver their speech virtually. Is there any specific tips that you have for people as it relates to that?
Absolutely. The biggest difference between the offline world, so the in-person one, and the virtual one is that you cannot gauge your audience's reaction online. So let's say I'm giving a workshop to you and a couple of your friends in Denver, and I'm telling you, okay, this is how you master public speaking, all those things. And I say a joke. Two things are going to happen. One, you're either going to laugh at the joke and go, oh, Brendan's such a funny guy. Or two, which is much more likely, you're going to say, this guy is not funny. Why is he telling jokes? But either or, I can see how you react in real time and I can adjust. So if I realize that I'm not a funny person in that presentation, the next time I give you a presentation or a workshop, I know to say less jokes and try different analogies or maybe different stories. I don't have that luxury in an online presentation, which means I need to say the same joke with the same level of passion, with the same level of energy, without knowing if it's funny. So I'll give you an example. In this very conversation we're having right now, Craig, I actually have no clue how you're reacting to what I'm saying because I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at the camera lens. Because if I was looking at you, I wouldn't look like I'm looking at you at all. But you're just one person in a Zoom call. Most calls have 10, 15, 20 people. So everyone's in these tiny screens. Can't really see. So there's two tips I have to overcome this. One is what I call virtual Zoom prep rooms. What you do essentially is you get a bunch of critics come on a Zoom call with you as you present, and they make fun of everything that you do. They give you pointers on everything. The way that your hair is moved, the way that your mic is, how's your sound, the way that you're dressed, your background, and how you're speaking, so that when you actually do the real presentation, you're ready and prepared. Second thing, imagine the perfect audience. So what I mean by this is it's a mindset change. So when I started doing podcasts as an example, I used to stink because my mindset would be, why is a stranger asking me questions about my life? I don't know this person. Right? So I would just be worried. But after you do 100 shows, you kind of just go, well, wait a second. Craig's probably trying to help some people out here with this awesome podcast. So I'm going to assume as if I know Craig and we've been having a conversation for years. That takes a while to get right, but over time, as you realize that your audiences are actually there to support you, or else why would they be on the call in the first place? You're going to be more incentivized to speak to them with the same level of energy.
Yeah, and one of the things that you were saying there about looking at the camera versus looking at you, it's something that as I've done a number of Zoom calls, I have really tried to figure out, oh, I've got to keep looking at the camera. I can't be looking at the person. And it's difficult to do that. I've tried to move my screen so that the person is like right underneath my camera and so forth. So it doesn't look totally weird. But, and I've even tried these things where you put a teleprompter type device over the camera so that it then comes up and is displaying whatever it is, whether it be text or the person's image or whatever, as you're looking at the camera. And it is something that people have to practice. I really wish the technology existed so that the camera was right behind your eyes so that you and I were looking at each other. And maybe somebody will invent that someday. It shouldn't be that hard, I don't think, to have a camera inside your screen, but that is something that does take some practice. Now we need to take a quick break. And on the other side of the break, I actually want to talk to you a little bit more here about not just public speaking, but maybe about creating videos and your YouTube account in general, how you've grown as many followers as you have, for example. So we'll be right back after this. Hi, I'm Greg Jameson, the host of the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. Every week, I not only have the opportunity, but the real privilege of interviewing experts in their field, true thought leaders, and I get to share this information with you. The purpose of this is really to help you sell more of your products and services online, which is the core premise of my primary business, Web Stores Limited. At Web Stores, we go out and we create e-commerce websites for small businesses. Plus, we do internet marketing and digital advertising for those businesses to really help them sell more online. We have a whole number of resources and tools designed to help make this process easier for businesses, probably much like yours. I've been the author of several #1 best-selling books, including Amazon's Dirty Little Secrets and The Influencer Effect, plus a whole series of online courses if you want to learn how to do this stuff yourself. The best way to remain in contact with me, besides subscribing to this podcast, of course, is to simply go to gregjameson.com/free gift, where I have a special offer for you simply because you are a valued listener to this podcast. Thanks again, and now let's get back to today's episode. Welcome back to the 20 Minutes of Influence podcast. My guest today is Brenden from Master Talk. And right before the break, we were talking about not just public speaking, but how to apply that to videos. And there's a couple of reasons why I think this is important for people that typically listen to this podcast. One is I've indicated that I really think that video is a huge factor to put on your website. Specifically, if you are selling products and services, you want to have a video out there that explains your product, explains your services, and you're coming across as being very natural to the person that is looking at your website. But the other part of it, and something that Brenden has done a really good job of here, is to create a YouTube channel that starts to build your audience so that you can be building your followers and having people really relate to your message. So let's talk a little bit about both of those things. Let's actually maybe first start with videos in general and what people need to do to kind of create a video. It's probably going to end up on YouTube as well as on their website, but to create a video that has these kind of professional looking, what do you call it? The little screenshot that depicts what the video is, as well as coming across with, a good background or a good message or whatever. What are your tips and pointers on that?
Absolutely. So the caveat that I'll start with is, why is video so important? To be honest with you, Greg, I had no intention of being a YouTuber. I just wanted to be a senior executive at IBM or at a company and live my life in peace without ever being a public figure. I never wanted to do this. So why did I make the decision to do it anyways? The reason is actually very simple. I've been coaching people on public speaking for many years now. One of my friends came up to me and he said, "Do you have time to coach everybody?" And I just said, "Well, obviously not. I'm not going to live very long." And he just replied with, "So what are you going to do for the people who can't afford you? The people who will never get access to you?" And that's when I really started to question what I was doing with my life. And I started essentially making videos. If your goal is to impact the world in today's society, for the most part, I would argue, you need a video. You need something in that format so that people can connect to you in the best possible way. And of course, in the context of public speaking, the public speaking guy needed to show people how to speak. And if he doesn't speak well, it doesn't work. So I started making videos on the subject. So you really need to get clear on who it is you're helping. And the bigger your vision is, the more compelled you will be to make videos. As for strategies and tactics, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think the key is more about practicing every day. So when I started making videos in my mother's basement, I sucked on camera. This is coming from a guy who had already presented hundreds of times. I stunk because I was alone in my basement. There's nobody to talk to. I had no energy because I wasn't talking. There was nobody there. And it was really hard. So what I did instead was I optimized my environment in a way that made sense. So I created an in-person audience. What I do now when I film is my video guy is actually sitting there behind. So I'm presenting to him, not the camera. So it gives me that energy that I'm looking for. But the idea is simple. You can just look at my first video and compare with today. If you're willing to practice on camera 500 times, your 500th time will be better than the first one. I presented on camera every single day for a year. That's how I went from my terrible videos at the beginning to what it is today. And one easy way you can do this for anyone who has Instagram, go on your stories and just post a 30-second video every day. Literally just say, oh, this is a thought I had. Hey guys, this is Brenden, blah, 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 blah. Do it every single day. And you'll start to develop that muscle.
Yeah, good advice. Now, how do you get to where no one's following you, which no one's going to follow you at first anyway. So the fact that your videos kind of stink at the beginning is no big deal unless people go digging back into the archives to, really see, I wonder how this guy started or whatever, and keep scrolling down through till you get to your first video out of 500. But how do you actually get people to start to show an interest in what it is that you're offering and to subscribe to you and end up with as many viewers and subscribers as what you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So now that we've conquered the first step, which I guess the advantage for people is most people can't even get through that. So if you can get through that, you already have a lot less competition. So now let's talk about building a brand. I was very fortunate in the sense of I knew what the intention of my content is the first second I started posting. I knew what content I wanted to make, public speaking tips, and I knew in what format I wanted to do it in. And obviously, once again, I stunk at the beginning, but over time I found a format that worked out for me, for my own style. For everyone else who's listening though, what I would recommend is to just keep posting videos about your own subject matter expertise and ask yourself this simple question. Who are the 1,000 people in the world who need your content the most? And get really specific. If you're a fitness trainer, is it people who are overweight, people who want to get more healthier? Is it people who want to refine their diet? And the next part of that, once you refined it, message them one by one. I always say that the best way to get 10,000 followers is to talk to 10,000 people. I think we get lost in this, do this SEO trick or that thing. Whereas if you want to get 10,000 followers, just guest on 1,000 podcasts. Do this, do the one-on-ones and build a loyal following. Because remember, if you have 1 million followers and nobody buys from you, you have zero authority. But if you have 1,000 followers and everybody buys from you, everyone listens to you, everyone understands what you're trying to do, then you have authority. So remember, authority over followers, engage people one-on-one. And if no one's following your content and nobody likes what you're dishing out, it means the content isn't good enough. So keep working on it until you've really boiled down what you're the best in the world at.
And do you ask people in your videos specifically, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you would share this with other people and make sure you subscribe to my channel and all of those kinds of things?
I do that, but I think that's more strategy. I think what I'd recommend for 99% of people listening right now is how do you get your first 1,000 subscribers on YouTube? And for the most part, getting 1,000 means messaging 2,000 people. So I would start there, and then after you get to 1,000 subscribers, then you can follow other stuff for growth and expansion.
Okay, and then do you post your same videos on different platforms, or do you only post on YouTube?
So I do post in different platforms like Instagram and Facebook, but my content on YouTube is specifically created for YouTube because that's where I focused all my attention on. So I handwrite every single one of my scripts myself, and I double check everything myself. And then what I do with the other platforms, I just take snippets from those clips and I put them on other social media platforms. So I think for those of you who are interested in building a social media presence and brand, I highly recommend making YouTube videos because it's a great exercise and thought process to take all of your best ideas, put them on display, and then chip them into different content or different mediums.
Okay. Now, your channel, one, it looks really professional. You've got your little screen captures or whatever all set up.
Thumbnails, yeah.
Yeah, the thumbnails. That's what I kept trying to think of. You've got all those set up so they look consistent and whatnot. What about someone that isn't really putting out that kind of content, but maybe is creating some content about one product, and then they're doing something else about another product, and then maybe they're doing a video specifically for one of their customers or whatever? Do you recommend that they have separate YouTube channels so that they can kind of have this one professional looking one, and then you have this other place where they're putting out kind of this one-on-one stuff? Or how would you go about doing that?
Right. Everyone's going to have their own opinion on this, but here's mine. I think it really depends if you're a company or a personal brand. So for those of you who are interested in building a personal brand, you definitely want one channel that's consistent with a lot of the great stuff that you have to share about the world in general. And then if you want to sell a beauty product or something, you can do that through your personal brand. But if you're only going to talk about your products in those videos, no one's going to watch because it's not useful. It's not something people want to see. So what I would do instead, especially if you're someone who's listening that's an educator, a coach, someone who's is in the knowledge sharing industry, which I'm assuming is most of you, you really want to hone in on what are the messagings or what are the topics that nobody talks about in your niche or that you want to expand more on. And by creating consistent content on one YouTube channel, then over time you can sell whatever it is you want to sell to that audience.
Good advice. So we're about out of time here. Is there any kind of final thoughts that you want to leave people with? Kind of one aha moment that people really need to take with them?
Yeah, for sure. I always like to share my favorite quote. And my favorite quote is be insane or be the same. If you're still listening to this podcast, and me in particular, you probably want to make a difference in the world. You probably want to do something important with your life. So the only advice I have is the only way to do that, I think at scale, is to be more insane. Don't you find it odd that a 22-year-old kid started a YouTube channel, public speaking and communication, then went on to coach CEOs of companies at the age of 23, but also lives in his mother's basement, is literally having this conversation on his mattress, doesn't own a car, and doesn't plan on moving out of his mother's house till he's 30? How do any of these decisions make sense? And that, my friends, is the point. When all of your decisions make sense to the only person that matters, which is you, you're probably making the right calls.
Good advice. How can people stay in touch with you, or go ahead and tell us how to get to your YouTube channel?
Absolutely. So for those who want to check out my YouTube channel on public speaking tips, that's Master Talk in one word. And if you want to message me directly with any questions or comments, feel free to message me on my Instagram page, which is Master Your Talk.
Very good. Thank you, Brenden. I really appreciate you spending the time with me here this afternoon. And I subscribed to your channel already. I look forward to keeping in contact with you.
Thank you so much, Craig.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of 20 Minutes of Influence. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you are interested in booking myself as a speaker at one of your events, or are interested in any of my coaching programs, please visit gregjameson.com.